back to another Electronics and More video. Recently I went to a hardware store in my area that was going out of business called Orchard Hardware. All around the country, 99 stores were being closed, and the discounts started low around 10%, and they gradually moved up. So I kept an eye on the store, and one of the locations was not selling a lot of their plumbing stuff. So what I did is I kept waiting, and I got very friendly with the people that worked there, and they told me when the last day was going to be at the store. So I went back in the morning. It was 90 to 95% off at the store. So I go in there and I start loading up on hose bibs and valves and everything. I just start load up on a whole bunch of stuff. And once I'm doing that, a gentleman approaches me and he says, "You see what you have in your basket? Maybe $20, $25 worth of stuff." He says, "I'm going to make you a deal that you can't refuse." He says, "You see this entire aisle of plumbing, the one side on the left and then the other side on the right?" He says, "For $25, you can have one whole side of the aisle. If you want both sides, it's only $50. I couldn't believe it. So I grabbed a shopping cart and I ended up grabbing almost $10,000 worth of expensive plumbing supplies for only $50. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out what I have right here first, and then I'm going to give you close-ups. Now right in this box over here is roughly 30 pounds of copper fittings. In that box are very expensive, US made, red brass and other brass valves. There's roughly 114 of them in that box. Average price of those valves, $12 to $14 each. Some of the copper fittings in this box are very large, which you'll see in a minute, and they sell for about $8 to $10 each. In the box in the back, it is filled with cast brass fittings, very tiny sizes, maybe I think an eighth, all the way up to 1 inch. I have bronze ground clamps that were there. And remember, when you go into these places, when he says take the whole aisle, people generally go in there and they hide things from the electrical section because they don't want people to find them, because when the price goes up from like 40% to 80%, then they go back and they buy those items. So what ended up happening, I found a lot of items unrelated to plumbing as well. Now in the basket back there, it's fully loaded. So what I'm going to do when I get to the basket, I'm going to show you a picture of everything in that basket. The envelope in the back is filled with brass nipples, all sizes from 1/2 inch all the way up to 1 inch. This bag is filled with PVC fittings and PVC valves, check valves. There's all poly connections in there. And there's some shark bite stuff. This one here, the yellow tub, is filled with CPVC fittings, expensive ones. The one on top right there, you can see it looks like it's chrome. That's actually nickel brass. There's a union over there. It's just loaded. There's valves and really good stuff at the bottom that you can't see. I got that whole tub. Over here is all their cast iron or black iron for gas inside that tub. I'll show you in a minute. Totally loaded up. In this bag here, this is when you go to Home Depot and you see all those little racks in the plumbing aisle where they have the prepackaged brass fittings. Everything in this bag is brass. And you know when you go to the store, they're like $5, $6 each. There's got to be 1,000 or 1,500 of them inside that bag. Over there I have a whole bunch of clamps, 2-hole clamps, different sizes, up to about 1.5 inches. Over here are very expensive brass and steel dielectric unions, and you use those on your water heater when you want to separate steel from copper. You don't want to have the steel and the copper touching with water between them. What's going to happen, it's going to eat away at the copper. A small current is going to flow. So what the purpose of the fitting is to keep them separate. In this case it's brass and steel, and the water won't be able to make the two connect because they won't be touching. This bag over here, the smaller one, is filled with 2-hole straps that are copper clad, along with some hanger straps. Let me give you a close-up of the copper fitting box first. Let's take a look. Alright, inside this box you're looking at 30 pounds of copper fittings. Let me just go through them so you can see what's inside. A lot of very heavy fittings, especially the male adapters. They're very, very heavy. A whole bunch of these. This is 1 inch, I believe. Yep, and these right here go for around $10, $11 each. Elbows, more adapters, and then also, here we go, these very expensive unions. It's one side sweat, actually both sides are sweat, and it's held together with a brass nut. Tiny refrigeration copper. In the very bottom is where I have the smaller copper, but this entire box is loaded. This one was $11 if you had to buy it, and there was about 10 of these in there. But there's just a ton of copper. In this box alone, there's probably $1,500 worth of fittings, and the scrap value, let's see, copper's around $2.20 a pound, and it's 30 pounds. So you could always scrap it to get money back, but of course I'm going to try and sell them because they are brand new. Now let me show you all the valves. Okay, we're now looking at the box of valves. There's 114 of them in here, and it's worth around $1,500. These are made in the USA by a company called Arrowhead. They're lead-free, and they're called no kink hose bibs. And the reason why it's no kink is when this is on the wall, you see this angled straight out. When you pull on the hose, it can't kink because it's angled outward. So if you take another valve, like, let me see if there's one here. Here we go, boiler valve. Years ago, a lot of homes would have this one. This is just a boiler valve. And if you had this onto your house, you notice this is 90 degrees. So your hose would go down and out. And when you pull on the hose, what's going to happen, it's going to make a 90 degree and it's going to kink. So that's why this is a kink type. And this one here, like most of these in this box, are no kink. All different types. This chrome one or nickel plated is just an incredible buy. Quarter turn valves and 3/4 and 1/2 inch. I got one of these that goes into a wall, then you thread it. And the ones you would see at schools and businesses, the one that takes a key, I got a dozen of those. Let me show you the cast brass items. Okay, this box here is extremely heavy. It's cast brass. I have all kinds of swinging check valves, different size unions. I mean, there's a whole bunch of these. It's just not one of each. Large caps. This is 1 inch. And they have a 45-degree elbow. There's 90-degree elbows in here. There's a whole bunch of very heavy plugs. This is 1 inch. Tiny little street elbows. Brass plugs. I mean, and over here it's for a shower. 3/4 inch thread, or it could actually be for a hose bib. Just a ton of stuff. Big, big money. Because if you go to the store and you buy just this plug, it's about $4. And these larger brass fittings are like 6 or 7. Check out this union. I got a whole bunch of these 1 inch unions, brass. Let's see what's down here. There's a bunch of caps, smaller ones, 3/4. Okay, let me go on to the next thing. Inside this envelope, you have 75 brass nipples. Sizes vary between 1/2 inch all the way up to 1 inch. The 1 inch brass nipples, which you can see in a minute, I'm going to lay everything out, are very expensive, around $10 to $12 each, and the small ones are around $3 to $4 each. Now for the green tub, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's expensive valves. There are 2 water pressure reducing valves valued at $100 each, along with some ball valves. So I'm going to lay everything out to show you that right now. Right over here you can see all the clamps. I have 2 inch all the way down to 1/2 inch, and there is a bunch of them. In this bag here are the copper clad straps. There's a whole bunch, all different sizes, all the way down to 1/4 inch. And I also have these copper clad pipe hangers. You nail them into the wood and it supports the copper pipe. Right, here's a closer look at the dielectric unions. This side, in this case, is threaded for 3/4 inch. Both sides are threaded. This one here is a sweat type. You solder it on, and the opposite side is thread. Got the smaller one right here. And you can see over here is the very large. I got a bunch of these. This is the 1 inch on both sides. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think there's a couple of more in the bag over there. So I have around 5 or 6 of those large ones. And each one of these is like $14, $15 a piece. Over here you can see there's a whole bunch of tubing. It looks like 3/8 and 1/2 inch. This is used with the shark bite fittings. Pretty expensive stuff. I think there's about 20 different tubes, so I grabbed those. Now the PVC bag is filled with a ton of stuff. It's going to be a little hard for me to go through it all to show you, but you can see there's also some hosing thrown in. There's like 20 of these valves in there, different sizes. These plastic valves. There's a whole bunch of check valves in the bottom of the bag. All kinds of shark bite fittings. And these poly connectors. Let's see what else. There's all kinds of hose adapters. So if you want to go from a garden hose to a female pipe thread or a male pipe thread, there's a whole bunch of those adapters here as well. It's a smaller one, as well as a bunch of fittings. Let's see, there's clamps, a lot of good stuff. Now right here in this bag is some serious money. There's at least 1,000 packages in here, maybe 1,500. And when you go into Home Depot or Lowe's, you'll see the section where all these adapters are hanging up. So what I did is I just cleaned out everything that was hanging up, and things like this go for $6 each. If it's a really crazy type of a fitting, it might be like $12. Like this one here is probably a $4.55 one. This one fell out of the package. It's probably a $7 piece or $6. There's a specialty one here too. Flare on both sides, lead free. So it is just an absolute fortune in here. There's all kinds of different valves. More fittings right here. Pipe to flare. Let's take a look at this side. See here. Shark bite fittings and more of these compression kits. This right here, you have the taps if you have to put in a water filter. Here's just a whole bunch of stuff. This taps into underneath your faucet. Come out with the 1/8 inch nipple. Inside this blue tub are all the galvanized fittings. All different types of pipe nipples, adapters. In the bottom are all the heavy stuff wrapped up in plastic, like you see right here. Different sizes from 1/8 inch all the way up to 1 inch. Caps and reducers. There's street elbows. And you know, if you go to buy these, they're not cheap. Got these lock nuts, a whole bunch of these. Straps. Got that connector and that. Nice plug. Three 1/8 inch. Smaller lock nut. What do we got here? 1/8 inch union. Whole bunch of stuff. Big money. And in the yellow tub, it is all CPVC fittings. That's designed for use with hot water. There's all different sizes. There's couplings. There's male adapters, female adapters, street elbows, 1/2 inch mostly, but there are 3/4 all the way up to 1 inch. Snap fix. A whole bunch of these valves. There's 1/2 inch and 3/4. I think there's even 1 inch in there. Gate valves, angle valves, unions, as well as these brass fittings that are plated with nickel. There's a whole bunch of these in male and female. And there's a brass fitting there. There's a whole bunch like that too. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to rate, thumbs up, subscribe, and post links to this video on other websites and blogs. Also be sure to check out my video playlist as well.